last lesson we spoke about introducing our left hand, and we had 3 different chords. We had a C major, we had a C major 7, and we had a C7. And so what we were talking about was actually where we need to be pushing down correctly on this fretboard and the difference between our chords and our notes. If you haven't seen that, please pop back and have a look at it, because today what we're going to be doing is moving forward and talking about chord boxes. Okay, so chord boxes are essentially what you can use to read chords written down, rather than somebody go, okay, so it's this finger, there. It's the information, so at the top of the song you have all of your chords written out, all in their individual little boxes, and you'll be able to go, ah, cool, that is my chord, I need to work it out like this, and hopefully get the pleasing result. So, what we're going to do today is talk about how to read these guys, and we're going to go through 3 different chords, each one a different amount of fingers, okay? So, first of all, I'm just going to strum through the chords, just so we can get used to them. So we have a C major, who we looked at last time. So you'll notice that C major, I'm playing with my 3rd finger here. And that's our C major chord. Next, we'll be looking at an F major chord. 2 fingers. And then finally, we're going to be looking at a G major chord. 3 fingers. So, these are the guys, but rather than me try and explain exactly where each finger is, we're going to talk about our chord boxes. Okay, right, so at the top we should have a blank chord box, okay? And actually what your chord box represents is, if you hold your ukulele up like this, the chord box will be a visual representation of this, sorry. So, you'll see you've got your lines for the frets, as little blocks, and then you've got line, 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 which represents your strings, okay? So if you remember your string names, when you're playing the ukulele, that is 1, 2, 3, 4. So when looking at your chord box, we have strings 1, 2, 3, 4. 1, 2, 3, 4. So those are our strings, okay? So at the moment, you can sort of see that's a nice blank chord box, okay? So in order for it to be a chord, there needs to be one more bit of information on it. So we're going to have a look at a C major chord first. So now we have a C major chord box. So as you can see, there's a difference of, we've got this black blob now on the chord box, okay? And it's in a certain position. So this black blob actually tells you where your finger should go. So if we have a look at where this black blob lives, actually it lives, so let's have a look. So we've got string 1, 2, 3, 4. So it definitely lines up with this string here. So that means our finger needs to be on string 4. So again, let's count down the blocks, the frets, and see which fret we need to be on. So we've got 1, 2, 3. So actually we need to be on string number 4, fret number 3. String number 4, 1, 2, 3, 4. And fret number 3, 1, 2, 3. Perfect. Right, here we go. And just like last time, we said that is our C major chord. Right, one tiny bit of information. If you look underneath, at the very bottom, there's the number 3. So numbers at the bottom talk about actually our left hand fingering. It tells you what finger to use, okay? So these are advisory. You do not have to follow the fingering for these guys, but I recommend generally, if I've put them on, I'm telling you from experience, these have been the best fingerings I've found for the chords, but obviously we're all very different, so please do whatever's most comfortable for you, but try to stick to them the most you can. So I'm asking you to play C with finger number 3. You can see the 3 there. The reason I'm asking you to do that is because if you play with finger number 1 here, in order to get to most of our chords, we have to move back down this way. Straight away, that's a movement. My hand has to move. If I'm using my 3rd finger to go to another chord in the vicinity, you can see actually, my fingers are moving, my hand isn't. So, I've got some finger movement, but my hand really isn't compared to. That's a lot more effort, okay? And essentially we want to make this as easy as possible for ourselves. That's the best way. That's how we want to be doing everything. So, that's our C major, and hence, finger 3. Right, let's talk about an F major next. So he's a 2-finger chord. So, as you can see from the chord box again, now we've got 2 black blobs, okay, which represents 2 fingers, okay? So, what we're going to do is, we're going to have a look at what's going on here. So, first of all, let's line it up with our chord box again. There we go. So, string number 1. We have a black blob, and if we have a look, 1, 2, it's on the 2nd fret. So, string number 1, fret number 2. So, now we've got that information, check out what finger it's asking you to play. Is it finger 1, finger 2, finger 3, or finger 4? So actually, it's finger number 2. So let's do that right now. So I need finger number 2, and that was string 1, fret number 2. So I'm trying to keep it finger quite like a bridge, okay? So if you can see my hand, my finger's quite elevated there, okay? Don't want it flat. It's no good because I'm possibly going to mute the other strings or push down. I want it nice and elevated like that. Okie dokie, so there's no information on our next string, so we leave that alone. Right, so our next string has a black blob, fret number 1, okay? And what finger does it say? Finger number 1. You probably find your finger number 1 is already roughly around that area anyway. So remember, the first fret is rather tough to push down, so really give it a nice one. And then the last string, again, there's no information, so we strum him as normal. So, let's test that we're getting a good sound out of each of our strings first, because we can strum, but because the information is so quick, you can't actually hear if you're getting a correct note out of all the strings. So, if I demonstrate, my first string, so that's the 2nd fret there with my 2nd finger. Next string, 2nd string. That's nice and open. My 3rd string should sound like that because that's my 1st fret. And then finally my 4th string is open. Again, nothing is touching that. So that's how our chord should sound. That's how we want it to sound. There is a big chance we're not getting a similar sound, okay? So there's going to be a few reasons and we need to check them out first. So, first of all, if you remember from last time, when pushing down on the fret, you need to make sure that your finger is as close to the bottom of the fret as possible. Not actually pushing on the line, just slightly above it, but your finger will look like it's pretty much covering the line up. You'll be able to tell if it's right, because you'll have a nice clean tone. If you're on the line, you get that wonderful sound. Just above the line. There you go. If we're too high up the fret, we sort of get a little bit of a buzz there. So just above that fret. And we've got to be pushing down really hard. So we should hopefully get that note, okay? So you remember I spoke about that my finger is quite arched up like that. The main reason for that is because actually with our chords, a lot of the time, the strings we push down are fine. It's the strings we don't push down who end up as the problem because our fingers get in the way. Okay? So, what you've got to make sure is if you're not getting a clear note at the strings you're not pushing anything down out of, our open strings. So if you're not getting that clear note there and you're sort of getting that sound, then what it probably means is that your 2nd finger is sort of resting on that string. So you've got to try and move it as forward as possible. So there's as much as your finger on that string as possible. As much as possible on that string. so you can get that nice thing. And again, make sure your finger is as pivoted, as tall as possible. Okay, not flat, as pivoted, as tall as possible, like that. Okay. Let's make sure we strum through that chord again, just to make sure all of those notes. So again, if this note here, our fourth string, isn't clear and is quite muffled like this, then we've just got to check that our first finger here is not leaning on it. Again, nice and tall. Can you see? Nice and tall. Got a big bridge going on with my fingers. They're quite flat, or straight rather than flat. It will take a few attempts to properly get the chord clean. If you are getting a good clean sounding chord straight away, excellent, well done. If not, please don't worry, just make sure that you're pushing down exactly the right place and make sure your hand is nice and tall. Okay, nice, tall, bridge-like fingers. So far we've had our C and our F. This brings us now to our 3-finger chord, and that is G major. Okay, so this guy's a toughie, as we have 3 fingers. It's also a D chord on a guitar. So there you go. If you don't play guitar, there's your first guitar chord. Okay, right. So let's have a look at our chord box for G. Right, lots of black bobs. Okay, so you can see we've got 3. And again, if we have a look at how they go to the ukulele, we've got no information for our first string. Perfect, so we can leave that one alone. Right, second string, we've got a blob. So let's get to it. So I've got a blob on my second string. So I've got my second string here. And it's saying 2nd fret. Perfect. Second string, 2nd fret. So let's just check the fingering. Finger number 1. Hooray! Perfect, we're already there. So just make sure you're getting a nice note out of that. So we've got open string and then our 2nd fret. Okay, so let's check our next string. So our next string has got a guy on the 3rd fret. Okay, so let's just check what finger we need, sorry, before we do that. So we've got 3rd finger. There we go, so that's that 3rd finger nicely applied. So we should be getting that nice note there, okay? So at the moment I've got 1st string open, 2nd string, 2nd fret, 3rd string, 3rd fret. One more blob. So if we have a look again, so 4th string, we've got, well, our 2nd finger on the 2nd fret, okay? So that blob's on number 2, and as clearly there's a 2 at the bottom. So out of all the strings people have trouble with generally on G chords, this is your boy, okay? Just because it's quite possible your 3rd finger is muting it. If you're getting a nice strong sound out of that, fantastic, that's excellent. If we're not, then again, don't worry about it. We've just got to make sure those fingers are nice and tall again. See, nice tall fingers. So, if we play through each string of the G chord, he should hopefully sound like that. Okay. If you're getting 3 out of 4 strings, or 2 out of 4, well done, okay? That's it. I really do not expect people to be able to play chords straight off. If you are playing the chords straight off, wow, okay, well done. You were much better than I was when I first started playing, okay? So even if you've got 3 out of 4, 2 out of 4, well done, because that's like halfway there or 3/4 of the way there. It just takes a while for you to get used to sort of where your fingers lie and getting comfortable with the chords, okay? Right, so those are our chord boxes. So if we have a quick flash of those guys again, we had C major, who looks, again, like that. Nothing, 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 3rd fret. Okay, right, so then we had our F major. And so he looks like 2nd fret, 0, 1st fret, 0, nothing, okay? that was our F major chord. And then finally we had our G major chord, the big guy. And again we had nothing. We had 2nd fret, 3rd fret, and finally 2nd fret. Right, that's how we read chord boxes. This information isn't going to change, okay? So if you can get your head around how we've been reading them for these 3 chords, that's how we read it for every single chord, okay? When we start encountering songs and stuff like that, then I always have chord boxes at the top on the line, so you've got sort of an idea of what chords we're attacking first. And by then you'll be able to read them, and so you'll be like, oh yeah. I mean, a lot of them you'll start to recognise. You'll be like, oh yeah, okay, there's my C major, there's my F major. You might have something like a G7, you're like, oh, what? But again, it's just going through and going, oh, nothing, 2nd fret, 2nd finger, 1st fret, 3rd, G7. Okay, right. Practice getting those chords down, and remember what I'm saying about the chord box. If you get confused, hold your ukulele up like that, or bang it just like I did. That's really good for it as well. Hold it up like that and it should visually represent it. So there is your C major, just for your 3rd finger. There is your F major. And finally, there is your G major. Okay, have fun with those guys, and we'll talk more about those next lesson.